Welcome to the If You Know You Grow podcast. My name is Chantel Braley, and I am going to be your host for the next however many minutes. This podcast has been created to help bring you behind the scenes of some incredible brands, hear some incredible stories, and make it so that it is no longer an if you know industry, because now it is all about if you know, you grow. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming back for yet another episode this week. This week, we are actually going to focus on a little bit of a deep dive for our topic. I had a really great friend slash former employee come to me and ask me my opinion on how I felt influencer marketing was currently sitting in the industry and what my take on it was in 2025. I will be really honest with the fact that this is now my sixth take at attempting to record this episode. And a lot of that comes down to one, I have so many opinions, but also because I feel that this is the most controversial or maybe the most polarizing topic that we have actually touched so far. I actually don't think it's that deep. I don't think it needs to be that deep. It's an incredibly important channel, but people's concerns with influencer marketing come down to two things. One, either they don't understand that it is a channel, like Meta is a channel, email marketing is a channel, organic social is a channel. Influencer marketing is genuinely its own channel, and it has to have a strategy behind it in order to be successful. Or the alternative, the topic that is not my favorite topic, but a topic that I can't ignore, is the fact that Australia is overloaded with tall poppy syndrome. I can confidently say that I am one of the most well-rounded individuals in the industry when it comes to my knowledge of influencer marketing. Other than actually being an influencer myself and being a talent manager, I've done basically every other part of influencer marketing. I've managed campaigns for smaller businesses. I've worked on campaigns for businesses with seven-figure influencer marketing budgets. I've scaled teams that manage influencer marketing from, day zero to having incredibly successful programs. And I've also worked in an influencer brand as well as led influencer collaboration collections across multiple verticals. So I would say you're going to be pretty hard stretched to find somebody that is going to know this channel in the way that I know this channel. However, it doesn't mean that I've always gotten this channel right. There have been times where I didn't nail the channel or where the strategy wasn't on point. And the biggest thing is understanding that this is a channel. It is a brand marketing channel, but it can also have performance marketing aspects. And if you're wondering what I mean in terms of the difference between the two, brand marketing, we generally think of it as something that's a nice to have. Realistically, to grow a brand, it is not something that's nice to have. It is absolutely compulsory. It's just your budget may change for brand marketing. It may not be something that you can prioritize. Whereas performance marketing is very, very conversion driven and very critical. It's going to be where you spend majority of the money within your marketing budget. However, influencer marketing can't necessarily be treated like a performance tool. You can gather performance metrics from it, but you would never chuck money blindly, well, not even blindly, but you'd never chuck money into Meta and assume that you were going to have a really profitable campaign when you didn't have any previous learnings on how that campaign was going to go. So, in essence, before we get into this deep dive, if you have feelings about influencer marketing, you need to figure out whether or not do you have tall poppy syndrome and you just don't like influencers, which it's really weird to dislike an entire category of people that have literally done nothing to you, or do you just not understand the channel? And have you not utilized the channel appropriately for your brand? Because every brand needs an element of influencer marketing. You just need to make sure that you're actually using the right strategy for your brand. I felt one really good way for us to be able to break into this strategy would be to start with the basis of where did influence marketing come from? So I actually cut my teeth or started my career in my early days in more traditional PR with what was at that time influencer marketing. However, it was completely based on celebrity. So in 2008, I used to work with a PR firm based in LA. And I kind of went back to this career, I think in 2010 or something like that. But at that time, my whole job was trying to get designer items or items that had a bit more prestige onto a celebrity. Celebrities we wanted to be seen on were celebrities like Lindsay Lohan, Hilary Duff, kind of any of the it girls. You would want the it girl to be seen in your product because you would then want the trashy magazine at the grocery store to pick that up. And then it would either really validate your brand so that you could secure wholesale stockists, or alternatively, it could do the equivalency of what, going viral in 2009 was. It really just depended on your brand, but it was all about getting celebrity placement and seeding to celebrities. With the rise of social media, we've been able to take that same concept of seeing something on somebody of influence and oftentimes make that somebody who is just the girl next door or the person next door. So, social media has actually empowered us to be able to decide who we want to influence us and who we want to, hold that power. Currently, I definitely believe that celebrity is still very powerful. Not all celebrities are really powerful, but celebrities who are very trendy or topical can drive a certain level of notoriety for your brand. But aside from celebrity, and sometimes there are influencers who are celebrities. So if throughout this episode, say I reference Alex Earl, who is a TikToker. Alex Earl to me is now a celebrity and she's also a businesswoman, but she started as an influencer. So you can start in one lane and you can move to another lane and it can be very different. But there were brands that were working with Alex Earl just as she was going viral and before she really hit that celebrity status that would have seen huge success at a profitable rate because they were working with her. But back to the point. One big thing with influencer marketing is there are different levels of influencers because we basically have the power of who we are making an influencer at this point. I've created 4 different categories of people that I want you to think of in terms of who are influencers. And I'm going to get my notes because if not, we'll never get to the point. Okay, so I have broken down influencers into 4 different categories. Now, what I would like you to know is that these categories are not mutually exclusive. So it's not that an influencer can only sit in one lane, but these are the 4 lanes in which I feel influencers currently exist, and this is how I would categorize them. Aside from this, there's different levels of people within these categories, but I could really do an entire series on this, so we're just going to start with the basics. Your first form of influencer is going to be a celebrity. So this would be somebody like Sydney Sweeney, who just did the huge campaign, which is quite controversial with American Eagle. This would be, Alex Earl. So people we've discussed there. There's also Jeffree Star, who was someone who, now is an incredible businessman off the back of what originally started as a social media career. And then you also have somebody like Kim Kardashian. So all names which, even if you don't know what that person does or what their origin story was, they are of celebrity status. We're talking tens of millions of people follow them, and tens of millions of people follow them across multiple platforms. So they are incredibly well known. Kim Kardashian also is someone that I feel like I get into conversations about a lot because I love Kim Kardashian. I am the biggest fan of Skims. I love Skims, but she is somebody who has kind of had this journey from being a D-grade celebrity, which someone who didn't have a lot of influence, to somebody who then did licensing deals of her name, because back when she had Kardashian Collection, that wasn't actually owned by her. That was a licensing deal with an Australian man and his company. I got to work on that back in 2010, which is why I know that it wasn't actually their brand. She then pivoted into now owning her own brands and now having a private equity firm. So if you think about the power of celebrity, she has really hit multiple levels of fame and multiple levels of celebrity, and she's been able to then monetize that fame through different D2C channels. So look, if you hate influencer marketing, then that may not be exciting to you, but to me, I think she's a really smart, really strategic businesswoman, and she makes really great products. So I'm not going to knock it because I've loved most things that Skims has come out with at this point, and I think she's doing a really good job. The next category you have is going to be the tastemaker. So the tastemaker is somebody who has a high level of influence because they are known for being the it girl or the cool girl or the it guy. There are, and this is where like I'm not going to name names because I don't want someone to disagree with where I maybe have placed them. I don't actually care if a brand disagrees with where I've placed them, but I don't want, again, this is like a very personal topic. I don't want someone to think like, oh, I have a community. And I'm like, you actually don't have a community because you don't respond to your comments. There are tastemakers, and a tastemaker is somebody who is really cool, really relevant, maybe has a bit of a mixed engagement across their platforms, but their content generally has quite a large reach, or they have a lot of views on TikTok. And usually they just have really great style, or they're just really hot, or they could have a very likable personality, but their content isn't really about anything that's too deep. That is somebody who their value is actually in their face. So you working with them will only be powerful if you have usage in your deal. And I think often brands are drawn to tastemakers because they are more affordable than a celebrity, but they're somebody who people know, and then they ask for the wrong content or wrong deliverables, which, if you haven't done influencer marketing, deliverables are basically the pieces of content that the talent will deliver to you throughout the negotiation, or just, the strategy's lacking. So the tastemakers are the shiny things. They are great. They make incredible content, but generally, if you do not have an appropriate strategy with them, you're not going to see an ROI. We then have creators. So creators is quite a vague term. I would say there's UGC creators in here, but then there's also a lot of like micro and macro influencers who maybe someday will become a tastemaker or someday become the other category that I'll talk about in a minute. They are someone who really understands how to create great reach, how to create great content. They're maybe not somebody that is really, really well known. They may not drive conversion, but their value is in the type of content and the diversity in content you'd be able to get from them at a much more affordable rate because they're not really somebody that is yet known. A lot of these people are effectively like really great marketers. They just don't have a tangible product. They are the product. You then have community builders. So community builders are the people who I feel are very conversion heavy. These are people who generally have quite large followings. And when I say like quite large, I don't mean a couple million. I mean, look, this can really range from 30,000 to a million, right? So these aren't incredibly viral, but they're definitely bigger creators. The community builders are people that either stand for something more than just being pretty, which like there's nothing wrong with just being pretty. Like, God bless you. You literally genetically have been blessed. So please do not take that in a way that I'm trying to take anything away from you. But they are known for something more than, just being attractive and or just being stylish. They generally will have content that shares a lot of their personal life. So they are putting their heart on their sleeve. They may be like a mummy influencer. They may share a lot of intimate parts of their relationship. They, maybe have had life situations that they've shared. Somehow they've built community, they've built really strong engagement and really strong trust within their audience. So these are the people that generally will be very profitable to work for, but they may seem a little bit outside of the box because your product may not actually be something that sits within their normal content pillars, but these people are sharing so much of their life intimately that if there is true alignment, then it would make sense to collaborate with them. So to recap, really we have the top of funnel people, the, more so do it for clout, do it for notoriety, which are the celebrities and the tastemakers. And then on the flip side, we've got the creators and the community builders. Sometimes there's a little bit of overlap between them, but to me, there are very two clear divides across the two of them, where sometimes there are red herrings where you might think somebody is a tastemaker, but they could be a community builder, sometimes sit within the mid-size and curve community. And the reason that I say that you will think they're a tastemaker because they've got this huge reach and they're very good looking and their content super aesthetic, but the fact that they have a point of difference and they are creating a safe space for somebody. So, the curve community is a prime example of that. Women who have not seen their body types represented elsewhere are creating almost like a parasocial relationship with a creator because they see themselves in that person. So you can sometimes get both. It is quite rare, but these are the four, I guess, types of creators that I would reference. So when you're looking at an influencer, the big thing is figuring out what is my end goal as a brand before working with them. Because if your end goal is just to drive profitability, influencer marketing is the highest risk place to do that. However, you're not going to build a brand if all of your marketing spend is spent on conversion marketing. You're actually going to ultimately end up spending a lot more in the long run because you are going to find the wins and you'll run with the wins, but you're not going to have advocacy for your brand. You're not going to create community. You're not going to do any of the other things that will help your brand build its brand. You're literally just like putting money in for conversion. So I would definitely recommend making sure that when you're looking at your marketing spend, you're looking at it from a very 360 strategy and you're not putting 100% of your, eggs into one basket at any time. So influencer marketing is one of those additional baskets where you can start trialing and testing and adding it into your strategy. So like you need to decide ultimately like what is your end goal? What do you want to achieve before you go into this strategy? The different things that you can look to achieve would be I want someone to validate my brand. I want someone to massively expand the reach of my brand. I want someone to help me build my community, or I want someone to provide me with content because I'm struggling to create diversity in content. So, those really are the 4 reasons as to why you would want to work with influencer marketing. If you want reach and awareness, you're looking at celebrity or you're looking at tastemaker. Celebrity is going to be incredibly expensive, incredibly high risk, but you'll get a huge reach out of it. There are success stories of where it's really paid off for brands, but I really feel that very few brands are going to be able to see success with this. I've actually worked with brands where we had celebrity placement and crickets. Nobody cared. And that's because like there's a level of risk, but also just because the celebrity wears it doesn't mean you're going to get anything back from it unless that celebrity has featured it in a way that allows it to go viral because it's been picked up by other sources that have helped amplify the message. I can think of like a good example that I can think of with this is in like when, of course, it's going to go back to the Kardashians. Why wouldn't it? So there was a corset that Khloe wore in one of like the confession room things that came from White Fox. And because she looked so good in it, I think it got picked up by multiple digital publications. And I don't even think she tagged it, but like she used some content from it and people were talking about where it was from. So that helped accelerate the reach of the brand because a notable person doing something notable, because I think it was like the first season when the Kardashians came back on air after Keeping Up with the Kardashians, you couldn't avoid that image or that content. So it really helped expand the reach. And like, I don't actually have any relationships with the White Fox team, so I don't know what it did for them, but I remember seeing it everywhere and I remember intimately knowing that it was White Fox. And there are very few circumstances where I can think of that happening for other brands where a celebrity wore their product and I remember somebody wearing their product. I can think of a couple things here and there, but I don't know that anything's eventuated from it. And, the first pregnant image of Gigi Hadid that was ever released, she was wearing a Petal and Pup product. And you wouldn't have known. We knew, but she didn't tag us. We didn't pay for it, but it didn't necessarily have that like viral reaction that you wanted. And even though it got picked up in people and we were getting the credit, etc., like the messaging wasn't about what she wore. The messaging was about her being pregnant. And I don't think the product was exciting enough to be able to drive that level of conversion. If your strategy then goes back to you really wanting like content that's going to validate you. So there are a lot of really cool Australian it girls at the moment. I'm sure you can think of any of them in fashion. You paying those girls to post in feed may not get a lot back from your brand because it's one going to look like sponsored content, but also cool girls know what they like, right? So it's very hard to influence other cool girls that something is cool. But if you paid for content and then you utilize that content in paid ads or on your own social feeds, you often will get a much, much better value. And you will also have usage, which usage is gold. Usage is one of the most important things when it comes to your strategy. If you want to amplify the message, you need to pay for usage. If you're not going to amplify the message, then don't pay for usage. And if you're unsure as to whether or not you should have advertising usage with something, then maybe stop what you're doing because you need to rethink the strategy, because it's like such a fundamental point. And I think, again, this is why people say they hate influencer marketing, because they don't get that, like, if you don't know whether or not you want usage, then that's a huge missed opportunity. The next one with the creator, this is the person who, if you want content, go to a creator. They get content. They know how to make something go viral. They know how to edit something. They know really how to work within their market. A lot of these will not be the UGC creators that are filling your DMs with whatever Canva template they've recently created. You're going to have outbound outreach required. You're going to have to find these creators yourself, because you need to find people that are brand aligned. And you want to make sure with these creators that you are paying for usage, because effectively you're paying for content. You're not, like, even if they don't post it in feed, it doesn't really matter. And then with the community builders are actually where usage doesn't matter. You don't need to pay them for content. With community builders, you want to figure out how are you going to best introduce your product to their audience. And a really good community builder won't actually work with you unless your product is aligned. So they're not in it for the cash grab. They are in it because they understand what their audience wants and what their community wants, and they know what types of conversations they really want to have. So hopefully, I guess that like gives you a bit of a view on like who are these different categories as told by me, and what is the purpose behind all of these different categories. Where I currently feel influencer marketing sits in the market is, I think that majority of brands are doing it wrong, and then they get upset that they didn't have performance because they were expecting similar results to Meta. I think back in the day, you used to be able to like flog discount codes, and people would do, especially for fashion, people would do a haul, then you'd end up getting like a profitable return and you'd sell all these products, and it was great. But then what happens, as with any strategy, is when something takes off, it then becomes mass market. It no longer becomes strategic. It no longer becomes unique. And now we have a huge group of people who have fatigue over, like, I don't want to see another haul with the code Chantel 10 at the bottom. What then this means for your strategy is there's two things. One, you need to figure out, is your brand a brand that wants to be influencer discount code driven? That is not going to be a yes for everybody. If you are trying to have a prestige brand, if you are trying to have a brand that is cooler, if you are trying to have a brand that has any level of exclusivity to it, you don't actually want the discount code. I don't believe there's any difference between the attribution or, conversions with a discount code versus a not discount code, because I think that there are other pieces to the strategy that are much more important. But first, that is the decider. Like, do you want a discount code or do you not want a discount code? If you want your brand to look prestige and you want everything to look really integrated, ditch the discount code, because people are buying it because they want it, because it's cool, not because it's Susie 10 for 10% off. So, you need to figure out like what is the avatars or the personas that you have within your brand. What are the buying signals of that person, and what are they going to find interesting in order to convert? So you then have that. Okay, so going back, I guess, we have these different classifications of influencers. We then have where you want your brand to sit. So really from here, it's how do you then become strategic with what you want to do? This is where it's hard, because I think that there's not a one size fits all. And I think that is one of the most dangerous things in our industry at present, is that people try to give a one size fits all view. You need to decide, what is the purpose of this influencer? Why should I be working with them? And how am I going to leverage their content, whether it's through my channels or through their channels, to make sure that I am getting the ultimate outcome that I actually expect from this? So that probably gives you a lot to think about, but also nothing at the same time, because this is why I think people hate influence marketing, is they think that, one, you're paying someone to like something, which if you're paying someone to like something, then you've chosen the wrong influencer. Things that I would look at before choosing an influencer, and this is no matter what, like literally no matter what level they are, except for celebrity, because like this is a bit unrealistic for a celebrity. But I like to look at things like how much of their content is sponsored. If their content sits at more than 60 to 70% sponsored, red flag. What was their origin story? So this is something that I've spoken about a couple of times when I've publicly spoken about influencer marketing. Where did they originate from? if you are trying to find somebody that has community, or if you're trying to find somebody that is going to drive conversions, like, how did they gain their social following? And this doesn't come from a place of judgment, but there are many people who, started in one lane, say for example, they started as a fitness influencer and then they've moved more to a fashion influencer. Now, I've had really great wins in the fashion space with fitness influencers, in the same way that I've had really great wins with fitness products with fashion influencers. So those two things, if you choose the right person, it can like really have some overlap. But if somebody has lost engagement because they've gone so far away from their origin story where they've built their audience, then oftentimes that's something that becomes a little bit sticky, because like, are people even caring about what they say? Because a lot of their followers, maybe they haven't unfollowed, but they're not like hanging by the every word and they're not as interested. But what is their origin story? I think the next thing is how collaborative does this person want to be with their deliverables? And I love the mix between having a really clear brief with what you want because you are paying for this, but also making sure that there's enough creative freedom so that this creator has something that organically sits within their content if you're paying for them to, post it on story or post it in feed or post it on TikTok. And the reason that that matters is, particularly with TikTok, frequency and authenticity are really important. So if you are not giving somebody any creative freedom, you will often not actually get what you're hoping for out of that, because it will likely flop on their channel. Often creators have ended up in this space not because they necessarily wanted to be people of influence, but because they created really great content, or they're hyper creative, or like, ultimately they're storytellers. So as much as a brand wants to control the narrative, like, you want to make sure that things feel, organic and authentic. And I'm not saying this in the terms of like, you want it to feel organic and authentic because it's definitely fake. Like, again, you should not actually be working with somebody who doesn't align with your brand. I think there are exceptions to this, because often you'll see like someone working with like Chobani yogurt, for example. And like, I don't think anyone's actually super excited about Chobani yogurt, but they're going to have really boring deliverables and they're going to be really straight to the point because they work in the world of advertising and not marketing. And I think that those are two very, very different views. So they are effectively buying ad space, which influencer marketing like is buying ad space. We would be silly to think otherwise. And I think that's where people get it wrong, is they don't realize like, you're buying ad space. So if you're not strategic, then you've just spent money on poor advertising space. But yeah, you want to make sure that things are like authentic and that there is a level of alignment between your audience and your end goal and what the creator has to offer. And you need to like really trust the creator with that and not over engineer it. I think the last thing, because I could go on with this like literally for ages because I have so many views, I think you need to figure out as a brand what type of influencer content and what type of influencer marketing you want within your brand. If you want to be the cool girl, you're going to have to pay for the cool girl, but the cool girl will pay off for you if you use her strategically, if you get usage, etc. I was actually chatting about usage the other day, and it was really interesting because, there's this movement with usage where sometimes people want a percentage of ad spend, sometimes people want a flat fee. I'm a firm believer in the fact that people shouldn't be doing things for free. We should always negotiate what we're doing because there needs to be benefit for both the brand and the, influencer or partner, and everything needs to be happening in partnership. So negotiation is really critical, but people shouldn't expect things for free because like, we all have bills to pay, and very few brands I think could get away with that, or really should be getting away with that. And you need to think about like, people are so geared to be like, well, what is in it for me? So oftentimes people will love to organically promote a brand because it's a product they like. And if they can get a financial benefit of it, that is awesome. But I think a lot of people also get upset because they'll send an influencer something and then like, maybe the influencer didn't even ask for it and they're like, oh, so and so never posted. A lot of times people get a lot of stuff, and their content can't just be taking photos of things that people gift them, because they will kill their engagement and there will literally be no benefit to that channel existing. But as a brand, you need to really figure out what you want and what is the purpose of influencer marketing, and whether or not you're ready to develop a full strategy around influencer marketing. Because if you're not ready to develop a strategy, then my advice would be, don't invest what you're not willing to lose, because it's no different from a lot of other channels in terms of you need to be able to test, you need to be able to repeat, and you need to be able to scale what's working. So if you're not comfortable with the testing side of this, you shouldn't be spending the money on this. But it is a really important part of your strategy, building a community if you want to build a community, which I've already said that I don't think everybody actually needs, and really having great, authentic, diverse content. I know that this episode was probably like a little bit all over the place, but I'm hoping that by now you've been able to kind of maybe come up with a couple questions as to where you feel your brand, currently sits, the different types of influencers and creators there currently are in the market, and then also, what you could possibly do with those creators. I feel like we're going to need so many different episodes on the deep dive of influencer marketing, but I was hoping to share a little bit of a view of what's currently sitting, because influencer marketing is not dead. It just no longer exists in a use the code Chantel10 at checkout for 10% off and buy 5 things that I'm wearing, because audiences are fatigued. We are all constantly selling things. 10% off isn't even a good discount anymore. And what's the point in putting your product on sale when it doesn't need to be on sale? And there needs to be a lot more partnership and strategy with creators if you're going to see success across these markets. I have a lot of things that I definitely want to try with some brands coming up, because I think that there is a lot of opportunity in this market. But you need to figure out where influencer marketing sits in your funnel and where you want to utilize this strategy in order to grow your business, because it does need to be a part of a strategy. And I've probably said that a billion times, but it is just something that I'm so passionate about. Different things that you can do with influencers, maybe to just talk about like strategically of what you can do, locking in partnerships that expand over, 2 to 3 months. I wouldn't do any more than 2 to 3 months. That have very deliverables that tell a story about your brand, about the product, and about the partnership are all really smart. So these could be things like collaborator posts, stories, integrated YouTubes. Like, you want to be cross channel with this. I love where it's really authentic, a co-branded influencer collaboration. These are incredibly low risk for the brand, but they can also be incredibly lucrative for the creator, and they will only be as successful as the partnership is. So if it goes well, everyone wins. If it doesn't go well, then the only risk is having to clear through product that you would have had to clear through anyways. But it really creates really great storytelling. And then I'd say like the last creator strategy that like I really like is being able to create viral seeding moments. So what seeding is, if you don't actually know, is like when things are given to a creator in the hopes that they will post. And, with these strong strategies, there's going to be a mixture between gifted or like contra deals. And there's also going to be paid deals. The example that I can think of right now that I think has been the most viral in the last year, and I say this clearly, I cannot confirm that this was actually a strategy, but I'm gonna bet you this was a strategy. The viral, I think it's the Macon top from Henny. Every single person was wearing that top, and it was a mixture of huge creators, macro creators, micro creators, and everybody was wearing that. I believe that they built into their strategy the ability to gift hundreds of those. They were able to create demand unlike any other product that I've seen, because I can't imagine that everybody just magically bought this top. I think they created that demand. But in saying that, as someone who has bought 3 colors of this product, the product itself is really good. So again, this is a full strategy. Like, they knew that they had nailed something. They made sure that every single person was wearing this product. Then in their mixture of contra collabs as well as paid collabs, everybody was showcasing that they were wearing this product. And then they had people purchasing the product who then wanted to showcase that they actually had this product and that they loved it. So obviously, like, that is dream scenario, but it was so strategically done. And I get it. Like, the product was phenomenal. So their strategy went deeper than just seeding a bunch of people. I don't believe that you can seed people a crappy product and it works. I've watched this happen quite a few times in the beauty space, where like everybody will get a product that's actually not very good, and then you see it go viral for a little bit, and then it doesn't actually have a cult following. You want products. Actually, I think beauty does that the most because beauty does like mass gifting. Whereas there are brands that have cult followings, again, because the product is great. So they are comfortable doing these mass level seedings and mass giftings. It's really hard to replicate that in fashion because your products change. But in fashion, influencer marketing is much more the brand level investment. You want people to be seen wearing your brand, and you want it to be a mixture of people who build community, because people who build community will make your brand feel accessible and relatable. People who are tastemakers are going to make your brand feel aspirational. And maybe that's something that you actually don't want, but think about the feelings and the emotions that these different creators, sorry, these different influencers, I'm trying to be really clear with like what I'm saying in terms of what I want to call people so I don't confuse people. But you want to be really clear with like, the purpose of you using these different people and how it sits within your brand. I feel like this episode has gone quite long, so I'm going to wrap it up because I feel like I'm not getting to the point. But as you can see, this is something I'm really passionate on. So influencer marketing in 2025 is not dead. It's going to continue to build. It's actually going to continue to build every single year. I wanted to actually like share some stats before we go into Smash and Pass about influencer marketing. So influencer marketing is currently valued at a $32.55 billion industry. This is basically off the fact that everybody has an element of influencer marketing. And this 32 billion is actually a 35% growth year on year. There are reports saying that there could be an additional 12% growth in 2026. So it's definitely not slowing down. Influencer ad spend in Australia alone is around $929 million. So this is off of Sprout Social, which is where I actually just got that most recent stat. So that is a huge volume that is being dedicated to this. 86% of brands in the US actually plan to work with influencers in 2025, and 67% of marketers intend to increase influencer marketing budgets, with some dedicating over 30% of total spend to it. Depending on your brand, I do think that starting anywhere between the 10 to 30% is a really good benchmark. It is a smaller portion of your funnel, so I really don't think it should be sitting over that 30% unless you are a brand that is uniquely driven off the back of influencer marketing. Some campaigns as well can be incredibly profitable, but it's really hard to get something out of the park it's really hard to get something out of the gate that's going to be instantly profitable. And I think that is just the nature of what we do. If it was easy, we would all just be making really easy decisions. Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, like from a database side, like influencer marketing is not slowing down. And there are so many tools I honestly think that are quite shit for influencer marketing. Sorry to say that. Often the pieces of technology are pieces that I think are not beneficial. I actually wish that LTK was as strong as it was in Australia as it is in the US. LTK is an affiliate marketing kind of like shopping platform that exists. It's not as strong in the market because it hasn't entered the market appropriately. There hasn't been training on the consumer or training on the influencer, I believe, appropriately. Whereas in the US, if you are a fashion or beauty brand, like I personally believe that you need to be on it because people get that it is a part of their revenue strategies. Okay, so I am going to do our Smash or Pass. If you haven't been here before, Smash or Pass is basically 3 things that are generated by my ChatGPT, where I want to chat through things that that are basically aligned with the topic that we're talking about. So the first one is long-term partnerships with nano and micro influencers. So to that, I say smash. However, when I think of long-term partnerships, I would not be looking at for your first term with anybody for longer than 3 months. I think that you pose a lot of risk with that, but having long-term relationships is really important. They don't necessarily need to be always on, and there could be an affiliate portion to this relationship, but I do think that it is incredibly important. The next one is smash or pass AI and virtual influencers. So to me, it's completely pass. It's not that I don't believe it's ever going to be a thing. I just believe that like that is purely for the sake of entertainment, and there's not going to be a level of trust associated with that person. And trust is a really important component to driving whether it's someone thinking that they're aspirational or relatable. There's this element of trust with both. And then the last one is one-off paid posts. So for one-off paid posts, I'm going to say pass. If you want to one-off paid posts, save your money. Don't get them to post it in feed. Get the usage for it and get them to create content for you. because one singular post in feed is too high risk. There is not going to be a benefit to that unless you are literally looking at celebrity level endorsement, which like I don't think that most brands should be doing that at all because that should be a part of a bigger strategy. Like the concept of someone going and spending $500,000 for an in-feed post with a celebrity terrifies me because that could $500,000 fail. And yes, it could $500,000 succeed and it could pop off, but like I am so big on sustainable growth. And if you are randomly spending that much money on something, I worry that you don't have the rest of your marketing sorted out to be able to leverage the possible opportunity that that could build within your business. So I am not a fan of the once-off posts. Thanks for coming along with me on this today. I know that I feel like I went a little bit everywhere, and part of the deep dive that I was actually requested was to go into like GoAF and similar software. So I think I'll have to go into a whole software side. But before I go into that, any brands that are listening, I want you to think about whether or not you believe that you are a brand that should actually have discounts with influencers. Because if you find that cringe and it's because it doesn't align with your brand, not because it doesn't align with your, personal taste, which let's be honest, oftentimes are the same, then you need to be like, there's no point in you even looking at that technology because influencer investments need to be a very brand only top of funnel activity. So sit on it, think about it. Let's catch up about it in my DMs. Let me know what you thought. And I hope you've been able to follow that because I am not kidding. This was my 6th time trying to record it because I have so many feelings and I think I have so much to say. Yeah, just let me know if you would like more. Have a great week. I'll see you next week.